Welcome to My Turn Life Coaching with me, Rikki Schwartz. If you're like most people, you've spent your entire life focusing on the demands of parenting, of relationships, of your livelihood. Much like you've been riding in a life-powered bobsled, leaning into what others expect of you. But I'm here to help you reclaim your life. I want to embolden you to raise your hand today and every day and say, "It's my turn." Hello, everyone. I'm Rikki Schwartz, and welcome to It's My Turn Life Coaching, Reclaim Your Life, with me, Rikki Schwartz, on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, and let's see if we can begin to get the seeds of reclaiming your life to take root. And then please join us every second and fourth Wednesdays of every month at noon Pacific time, where my expert guests and I will do our best to give you the tools to finally say, "It's my turn." On today's show, I am honored and excited to have Ursula Adams as my guest. Ursula is a management consultant, leadership coach, and founder of the She Hive, which is a women's connection and empowerment organization in Michigan. She helps business leaders capitalize on their individual and organizational strengths to build better systems. And her methods are focused on the disciplines of positive psychology, positive organizational scholarship, and are grounded in the beliefs that 1, the self can be a powerful instrument for change. 2, personal and professional development are fundamentally connected. And 3, people and organizations are not problems to be solved, but entities designed to solve problems. Today, we're going to talk about how all of you out there are probably doing too much. So, how do you know when it's time to scale back? Ursula is here to help us understand how to let your core values be your guide. Ursula, welcome to My Turn Life Coaching.
Thank you so much, Rikki. I am so happy to be here. And thank you for that introduction. I sound very fancy.
I know everybody listens to their bio and goes, "I'm better than I thought." So thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So ordinarily with every guest, I always fast track a connection between the guests and the listeners by asking the same question, which is, what are your personal core values? And in particular, the ones that align with today's interview. But of course, that's a natural question for you because your core values are the topic of today's interview. So run that off for us. What are they?
Sure. So I've actually done a lot of work around my core values lately. I thought it was very important during the pandemic to really evaluate them. And so I have only three. And they are curiosity, connection, and comfort.
Lovely.
So those are my three.
Those are good. Curiosity. There's 3 C's. Good for you for the alliteration.
Yeah, that's how I can remember them.
And comfort. That's good.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just connected with the gentleman who used to be my personal trainer before the pandemic. And so obviously his life changed quite a bit just based on the pandemic. He couldn't go to people's homes anymore and so forth. And so I texted him and I said, "So update me on your life. What's new?" And he said, "Not really anything." But the more we talked, he said, "Well, actually, I've decided to scale back work almost altogether. I am working on myself. I'm reading books about minimalism. I'm changing the way I think about everything." I'm like, "And you said there were no updates?" So I think that he has kind of, without knowing it, and he's going to listen to this interview when I'm done, he's kind of, without knowing it, taken a good look at what's important to him and what's not. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today. I was excited to hear him say that because this was a person who slept maybe 5 hours a night, who has a horrible back problem and was not really giving it the attention it deserves. So I love that we're going to kind of focus on people who are just not looking at what's important to them. So let me ask you, the values that you just named, and I'm going to try and remember: curiosity, comfort, and
connection.
Connection, right? I started to say that too. You said you've been working on them over time.
Yep.
Were they different a year ago? Were they different 6 months ago? Tell me how they've morphed.
I don't know that the value itself, like the core value itself, was actually very much different, but the expression of it is definitely different.
Interesting.
And in particular, connection. So I have been, in my first 50 years of life, I'm 51 now, an extrovert. Like, I can't be in enough meetings during the day. I can't be around enough people. That is where I get my energy, my best ideas. I love being around people. And so connection to me was moments of group elevation, right? So I really valued those moments of mass elevation. So like a concert, a sporting event, a whatever, where you could feel the whole group, the entity come together. Love that and craved it and planned my life around making sure that that happened. I mean, it's how the She Hive came to be, right? This whole organization that was in person where women came together and really explored, the things that really mattered to them. And as a matter of fact, pre-pandemic, I had swore that the She Hive would never be online because I wanted that energy in the room. It made so much, it made such a big difference to me. And of course, going into lockdown as we did here in Michigan and not being allowed to gather, and we still aren't even gathering in person for the most part, I really had to examine that. And first, I just couldn't, right? Like I had no alternative, right? And so connection had to be online. And it's funny because I'm actually a former digital marketing person, so I know all about doing stuff online. I didn't want to go back there, but I found that I could actually have that connection. But what I found is as lockdown happened and I was at home and it was just me and my husband in the house, and I started to actually, when I was forced into being more alone and more introverted, I found out that it actually really suited me very well.
Ooh.
And which, who knew, 50 years I had spent, as a people person. And
That is rare. I mean,
Yeah.
that's usually a wiring thing. I am wired as an introvert. I'm called an outgoing introvert, but I'm still an introvert.
Yeah.
I can't imagine switching from extrovert to being comfortable in the introvert scan. That is shocking, but lovely.
Yeah. And so when I started really exploring what connection meant to me now, connection was more about connecting with the people I most loved and giving them my energy, right? Instead of to all the masses, right? It meant giving it to them. It meant actually going more inside. So connection to me is a lot of meditation. It's looking for my source. It's connecting to myself, feeling my body, feeling my, my soul. And
you hadn't been into meditation before this, Ursula, or not?
No, I had just in, as long as there was a group around me doing it too.
Gotcha.
And yeah, I loved going to yoga class and like putting myself right in the middle of the room so I could feel the whole energy of the room, and I don't know if it was a coping mechanism not to pay attention to myself, maybe a little bit. But what I found is when it got quiet, connection became, time in nature, connecting to my source, connecting to people. So that one really, really changed.
Interesting.
Yeah. Comfort has definitely changed over my lifetime. I grew up a little punk rock rebel girl. So to me, comfort was, every fast food and cigarette I could get my hand on. And, as I mature and really look at what comfort to me is a discipline. And so being very disciplined about how I live my life now, paying attention to the fuel I put into my body, paying attention to my home, because, before, I never wanted rules. I never wanted routine. But what I found is that routine and discipline created comfort for me. Right. And so if I have a cleaning schedule in my planner and I stick to it, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I have this beautiful, clean home, and so that has definitely changed.
Wow.
Yeah. Curiosity has always been, I used to fuel curiosity by travel. And of course, I had to find a new way to fuel that during the pandemic. And I found that documentaries help a lot. I watched about 2 or 3 a day.
I love documentaries.
Yeah.
Oh, love.
Yeah. And so now that we've done a little bit, I love road trips. My husband and I love road trips, and we started to do a few more here and there, probably not for a while again, but, I had to change the expression of curiosity. And, that one hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot.
So let me ask you, did you find yourself examining these core values and expressing them in a different way? Or did you decide that you couldn't do it the way you used to do it? So you're going to make a conscious effort to find alternate ways?
No, not necessarily. I found myself I loved the beginning of the pandemic. I'm not going to lie. I was one of those, I would talk to my therapist and she's like, you are the only one that isn't having a meltdown.
No. That was 2 of us, Ursula. I was happy as a lark that people weren't bugging me to get out of the house more.
Exactly. And for the longest time, that was totally okay with me. And then I found myself in a funk, particularly when I was seeing the same person and the same 4 walls and the same Zoom meetings and, same clients over and over. Then it dawned on me like, hey, I've got to find something else to like feed my passion, my curiosity. But really when I really started examining it was, as we were, as rules were starting to loosen up and people were starting to meet in person again. And, I had transitioned all of our She Hive events to online and all my coaching to online. And there was suddenly this push to start setting up for in-person events again. And I also have to say, prior to the pandemic, we had 50 events a month at the She Hive.
Wow.
And I didn't attend all of them, but I was responsible for making sure 50 went off, a month. And it had really slowed down during lockdown. And so I'm like, there was just this tension inside of, I should get back to that. I should start gearing up. I should start ramping up. And so, and this desire to not do that anymore, like not grind and hustle anymore. And I've never been in a position in my life where grind and hustle wasn't the name of the game. Right.
That's amazing. That's really a bigger transformation than I think people probably realize.
Yeah. So I turned to a trusted advisor, my own coach, and one of my business partners. And she took me through the process of reevaluating my values. Like, let's really take a look at your values and then align the business to them.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So what are you doing about live events now? You're going to have 50 a month. You're going to have none a month. Are they all going to be online? What's the choice?
Still all online because people won't get vaccinated.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
We will put a pin in that laugh because I know how that feels.
Yes.
So we're going to take our first break. You got me thinking. So I have so many questions. Folks, you're listening to My Turn Life Coaching, Reclaim Your Life with me, Rikki Schwartz. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to dive a little deeper into how Ursula's recommending you use your core values once you understand what they are to guide you, particularly when you're overloaded or particularly when the environment doesn't allow you to use them as you would have otherwise done so. So stay tuned. We'll be back in 3 minutes with Ursula Adams. And we're back. You're listening to My Turn Life Coaching, Reclaim Your Life with me, Rikki Schwartz. If you're just tuning in with us, my guest today is Ursula Adams, management consultant, leadership coach, and founder of the She Hive, which we're going to talk a little bit more than in the last segment. Before we jump back in, Ursula, I want to remind any of our Facebook Live guests that they're welcome to put any questions and concerns in the chat box, pop those comments in, or you can call the studio at 800-930-2819. I also want to make sure everyone knows how to contact you, Ursula, once the interview is over in case they have questions. So give them the best contact, the best way to reach you, the best contact information.
The best way to reach me is go to the She Hive website, and that is theshehive.com. Don't go to shehive.com. Somebody else owns that.
Yeah, I learned that the really hard way, and I was so confused.
Yeah, I know, right? I've tried to buy it back from her a million times.
Plus,
but
there was also one that had She Hive DE, which was Detroit, and then I really got confused.
Well, you can, all of our social media handles are She Hive DET for Detroit. So
got it. Okay. But the actual URL, the actual website, theshehive.com, right?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm already so fascinated with what you managed to do, given kind of a requirement, in a sense, external requirement to do so. So why don't you tell everybody what you told me during the break, which is, what kind of created the extrovert in you? What did you discover about that? Because I think that's interesting to those who are extroverts or introverts.
Yeah. And I will say, this is why I think, because being a coach, I'm a firm believer in coaching, but I believe in coaching paired with therapy, right?
Yes, that's what I always tell my clients too. Yeah.
Exactly. And what I had really discovered in therapy, and it just really came to light during the pandemic, was my extroversion was a trauma response. I really. And so I'm a very empathic person. And I think a lot of people that grow up with, childhood traumas, right, become very empathic. It's a coping mechanism, becomes a strength in life, right? But it's a coping mechanism. And so what I had done as an empath is I love to be in like a mass energy field of everybody else's energy and channel that through me, because I would pay attention to that, but not my own, right? So I wouldn't hear myself.
Welcome back, everyone. As you probably have assessed, we had a little bit of a technological problem wherein I lost all of my internet. So, of course, I disconnected from the call. Forgive me, Ursula, I apologize. I think we're back on track. Can you continue the story you were telling, please? Because it was a great story.
Sure. So I was saying, and one, I just have to point out that this happens with Rikki and I whenever we get online together.
No,
I just think
I'm
it's all
blaming
this
her,
energy.
everyone, for the record. It is because of her, nothing to do with me.
Yeah, exactly. All this energy. So, I was saying that, I think I really used extroversion as a coping mechanism to not pay attention to my own feelings. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's not to pass judgment on any other extrovert that is out there, by the way. I'm talking about me and myself only. Right. And once I couldn't be around anybody else except for my husband, right. I really had to start paying attention to my own feelings and my own thoughts, and found out it wasn't really that scary. And I actually really enjoyed it. And now I am very, very protective of my precious energy, of what comes in and what goes out. And so I don't want to be around a lot of people anymore because it feels good not to soak up everybody's vibes.
That is so fascinating to me. I remember when you told me during break, my response was, because I'm such an empath, that's why I'm such an introvert. I cannot take 5 or 10 people around me who are struggling, right? Life coaching one-on-one, I'm great. But when I've got a group of people who are struggling or just in a kind of limbo, it wipes me out. So Good for you.
For you. Well, it's funny. I did, because the She Hive has co-working space. And so we did keep the co-working office open somewhat. And so I had a little mini COVID pod that I would work with up there. And they became like, I would take on their energy. And luckily there was only 2 other women, Jamie and Sonia, that worked with me regularly up there. But they both have ADHD, and whoa, that was hard to be in that office sometimes.
Okay, well, that's funny.
And then the funniest story about, taking in other people's energy was that Sonia was complaining one day that she was getting a toothache, and I ended up with the root canal the next week because of it. So,
wow. And she's not a twin.
No. Yeah. The empathy even runs to the physical,
So. Many lifetimes ago, I was a physical therapist. And the reason I had to quit literally being a physical therapist, among a few things, but primarily it's because if I was working with burn patients, I would feel their pain. If I was working with back patients, I would feel their pain. So I get you. All right. So tell us how, given all of this enlightenment, which is fascinating to me, how did it translate into modifying your professional workload to align with your newly expressed values?
Yeah, well, like I said, we ran a breakneck speed at the She Hive before. 50 events. I had a board of 30 people. We were serving a couple hundred women a month, and it went down to, there are some weeks right now where we have 1 event. And that felt initially like failure. But now I've, through doing this core values work, what I've really come to realize is that's all I care to do. Like the right people will show up at the right time in the right room. Right. Amen. And it doesn't have to be big and scalable. And my mission of connecting with people and doing the work that I value and is my sacred ground continues. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be on a large scale. Mm-hmm. And so I still go through periods like, man, I should really ramp it up. I should get more stuff on the calendar. I should do this. And then actually I can't turn my computer because I have too many things connected to it, but I have on my wall here a big 3x5 foot poster of my core values. And so anytime I get into that, like, I got to do more. I'm not keeping up with the competition. I'm not doing this. I go back and I look at that and I'm like, nowhere on there does it say I want to be like a mogul, a business mogul. Yeah.
And if anybody would have told you 18 months ago that you were going to go from 50 to 1 a month, what would you have said?
1 a week, but I would have said they were crazy and I was going to shut the place down.
Yeah. Like so you couldn't even have envisioned it.
Yeah, I couldn't have. And what I've really found is that by slowing down, it's now about quantity and not quality. Yeah. Or it's about quality and not quantity. Yeah, quality, not quantity any longer. Like I'm not just, pushing them out one after the other. Like I actually get to pay attention to what's going on now.
Yeah.
And that much more aligns with comfort and, what it is that I actually want in my life. In my consulting, because I do, I have the She Hive and then I do consulting still too. And on the consulting side of the business, I've been, in the same role for a couple of years. We've talked about it, serving as the chief of staff for um, an Ford IT transformation office. And what I had come to find was that it was getting a little bit too much, and it doesn't align with what I actually want anymore. So I actually started exploring other opportunities,
Good.
and moving to one. So
Yeah,
and
good.
soon, and in the next couple of months, but something that was a little bit slower pace and really aligned with how I wanted to live my life.
So
And
tell me, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it was hard to leave a client that I absolutely really
I
love
know.
and I respect and I admire,
Yeah.
and I love the work I do for them.
Yeah.
But their rate of change and their pace right now is too much for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When you started to scale,
Hmm.
let's talk about when you started to scale, I don't know, 5 months ago versus scaling today.
Yeah.
Is there less anxiety? Is it literally reducing, or was it already like, you know what, I'm there. I'm not going to have an anxiety saying no anymore. Or was it a gradual transition?
It's a gradual, and it's still
Yeah.
always when I started, in particular, when I started the She Hive, there were no women's empowerment centers that were focused on a holistic life view, right?
Yeah.
There was, I could go here to get business coaching, or I could go here to do this one thing, but there wasn't anything that actually focused on the holistic experience of a woman.
Yeah.
And now there's a million,
Really? I don't think I even realized that.
Yeah. One, because I've become more aware of them, but two, it's, I started the She Hive almost 6 years ago now, and it wasn't a thing, and now it's a thing, and it's starting to pop up in other places, and
Yeah.
and some very successfully with a lot more, backing and funding, and so there's this need, because I'm still a competitor, I still have high competition in here, right?
Yep.
And so, I'll see them get a partnership that I could have gotten if I had worked just a little bit harder, or something. And then that old me pops up, like, I've got to go, I've got to get back in, I gotta, gotta. And
Yep.
then I'm just like, I look at the poster, I look at the environment I've created for myself here that reminds me of how I want to live a life. And I was like, no, actually, I don't. More power to them. That's their people,
Good.
and that's what they
Good.
need.
That's
And
extraordinary.
yeah,
It truly is.
yeah.
So let me ask you this. It's kind of a compound question. Have you done the same in your personal life as well?
Mhm.
And the other part of the question is, how has your husband responded to doing it in both sides of your life, if you have done it in your personal life as well? Tell me what the response has been of your loved ones.
Well, it's funny because, being an extrovert, we were going out all the time. Like, I was always on the move, on the go. And my husband's an extrovert too, and he loves that. And so we were going out a lot. And now that it's returned to where it's safe to go out sometimes, right? He wants to go, and I don't, you know.
How does he feel
And
about, how does he respond to it? Like, is he vocal about darn it? Or is he like, you know what? I'm with you. I understand.
yeah, well, no, I don't think he understands, but what it has forced him to do, which I think is important for a lot of men, is really identify the friends for him. Because,
Yeah.
I have a
Okay.
ton of girlfriends I can go out with. Men tend not
Good.
to have that. Right.
Yep.
And so, he's really investing more in his friendships and spending more time with them.
I always say
And
that men don't invest in their friendships until divorce or widowing. So I think
exactly.
you forced him into it a whole different way.
So I've divorced from our extrovert life.
Yes.
And
That's
so
interesting. Tell me those scale backs, other than not going out all the time to dinner and with friends and so forth. What other scale backs have you done in your personal life?
it's not necessarily scale back. Like I said, one of the things that has been a big deal to me is this idea of comfort, and in particular in my home, right? And so and especially, when COVID first popped up, everybody was like, how do I get this out of my house? Right? And so I've become, it's so funny because I was never a good housekeeper whatsoever. And I wasn't going to pay anybody to come into my home, during the past year. And I have really gotten myself on a regimen about cleaning the house and keeping it the way that makes me feel good. Right. That's been a big bone of contention between my husband and I, because he's living the way that we've always lived. And I'm living like, by the end of the night, these 4 things are done in the kitchen. And finally, I just stopped fighting with him about it, because it's what I value. It doesn't mean it's what he values.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so if I value it, it's upon me to act on that value. I can't force my values on anybody else.
I mean, I asked the question because for those who are willing to take a look at their values and start to align their personal, professional lives accordingly, there are going to be shifts I don't think their friends, family, and colleagues are going to appreciate, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And, I haven't been let out into the wild for the most lately. So not a lot of other people have come to notice them. My consulting partner is a little miffed that I brought her in on this really hard project. And then I'm like, I'm out.
Of course.
But she also, because, she is my partner and she does this work also, she understands, she's like, I'm supportive of you, but I reserve the right to be mad that you're leaving me.
So let me ask you this. Have your friends and family and colleagues noticed that it is made you a happier person? I hate the word happy, but in this case, made you a more joyful person?
I don't know that many have, right? Because I've always had a pretty positive attitude.
Yes,
I know my mom's upset that I don't visit as much as I used to. So I don't know that they've noticed a big difference. Those closest to me, especially those that are like the woman that I turn to, Rachel, when I need coaching, right? My business partner. She's definitely, those close to me like that. My closest girlfriends, a few, have really noticed the change, right? Good. Some like it, some don't, and that, as that's okay, right? And
do you have any fear that a year from now you will have reverted?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm cautious of it, right?
Got it.
Because it is tempting, the old me wants to go to every, I see East Side Elvis and the Motor City Mafia is playing at the Caju Cafe on Friday. Well, God, I love them.
Of course. So do you experience the FOMO, right? Fear of missing out? Are you having a lot of that anxiety?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. The fear of missing out comes in, but then again, I just, it's the constant reminder of that's not what's important to me anymore. Right. Like, and so luckily setting that ideal state of what is actually really important to you, right? Of actually really defining. So when I listed out my core values, and did the core value work, it wasn't just that I put the words on paper. I actually defined the expression of them.
Perfect.
Right?
Sometimes I ask my clients to turn their core values into a statement, a core value statement. Is that kind of what you did? Yeah,
it's exactly what I did. And it's not just, like, and actually I'm scrolling up because I put it on a piece of paper so I could repeat it verbatim, but like curiosity. So I feed my desire to learn. So that was one piece, but I also wrote out like actionable expressions. Like I watch documentaries, I travel, I read, I prioritize my spending on education. And nowhere in there does it say that I go to every show, or that I spend 50 hours a day on a business, and so it just keeps, I just have to keep coming back to it and grounding. Like I did a lot of work to get here, and that world. And actually I will tell you, one of the things that I think is really important is I created this office environment that feels like an actual tangible expression of my core values, right? So it's got all of the things that actually make me feel very calm, relaxed, that it sparks my curiosity, makes me feel really good. I come sit in here. And it brings the environment back to, this is the life I want. My yoga mats in here, my meditation pillow, all of that kind of stuff. My husband's just on the other side of the door.
Human being. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for others looking to do what you did, or maybe I'll just say poking around to do what you did? What would you say is a good first step, for example?
Well, I've got a couple of things that I think are really, really important. The first thing is you cannot do this work on an empty tank, right? So, I work with a lot of, I work particularly with women and women in leadership roles. And, they're like, okay, I'm going to define my core values. I'll do it between 12 and 12:20, And you can't do that. Like, this is hard work, or I shouldn't say hard work. This is important work. And you have to set aside some intentional time to do it. And I always tell my clients that you have to bookend that time, right? Because you got to fill up the gas tank, and then you're going to drain the gas tank, and then you got to go fill it up. So I always tell them, before you sit down to do any of this work, take a walk, do some yoga, do some meditation, go play with a kid, pet your cat. Do anything that actually, brings the fight or flight down, right? And opens up the learning centers in your mind and brings you back into the space where you can actually explore these ideas. And so that's the first thing that I always tell, because we try to squeeze it in the middle of everything, and you get poop results.
Yes,
So don't do that. The second is that I believe, even, introvert, extrovert, whatever, that this work is best done with a trusted advisor, because we're too close to it, right? We
Yeah.
can't hear our own themes. And it's like, I don't know, a lot of people don't know what they're good at because they're so good at it
Yep.
that it just comes natural, that they just don't understand that.
Yep.
Right. And I'll tell you, my electricity is blinking on and off, so we're about ready to go.
Yeah, I have a generator, thank heavens, but mine is doing the same. We're having a heavy storm in Michigan, guys. In case you're not in Michigan, it's a biggie.
Yeah. And so I just say, like, a trusted advisor, somebody who's earned the right to give you some feedback, right? Somebody who's in it for you, not for themselves, right? That can listen to you and actually help pick out the themes and help you identify what you're really good at. Because, a lot of times we just don't know. It's so natural to us. So I think
always recommend, both in my Center for Agile Leadership, where I'm the president and a trainer, and to my life coaching folks, get an accountability partner. I don't know how you can function without one. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, a trusted advisor, accountability partner.
Yeah, somebody. And then, there's a couple of things I believe in, starting with what I call high point stories when you're starting to identify your core values. And so the high point story is the best day ever, right? Just verbalizing what the best day ever, or a best day ever was.
With my clients. That's amazing. Good. Continue.
I love doing that. So, you just articulate, my best day ever was this. And you go through from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, who I was with, what we did, why it was important to me, why it was the best day ever. And if you're doing that with a trusted advisor, they can start picking out the themes. I mean, I think that's something coaches are really good at, right? Is they can start picking out the themes there, right? And so that's one of my very favorite exercises, just to start the process.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
I picked it up.
I'm going to remember that under these circumstances, because I begin every life coaching client with, we're going to start with your core values. Yeah. And oftentimes they're like, I don't know. Family. They always start with family. I'm like, okay, family's not a bad one, but I want to talk about your favorite day, your best day. And that gets them to kind of get to that point. So excellent. Yeah.
Excellent. And, that best day exercise, again, because, I ground all my practice in positive psychology, right? So the whole idea is, if you're at that high point, right, then you're flipping on the learning centers in the brain and opening up to innovations and creativity. And so I think it's a great place to start, right? And so I will say, I'm just going to throw this out here. My very, very favorite book is Becoming a Resonant Leader, when it's a workbook. And so that's one of my very favorite workbooks that has a ton of different exercises in it for discovering things that can actually lead you to identifying core values.
Wow, and Becoming a Resonant Leader. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's by Richard Boyatzis.
Jacob, if you're able to Google that and show the link to it, that would be fantastic. Probably on Amazon.
Yeah. So Annie McKee and Richard Boyatzis.
Can you spell the last name again of the author, Ursula?
Boyatzis, Boyatzis.
Got it.
So in full disclosure, he was one of my professors in grad school. So,
no, that's a good disclosure.
Yeah.
That means he had an impact on you more than once. That's good.
He did, right? And I love this workbook. It's got amazing exercises in it that just get you thinking.
So give me an example of one of the exercises.
So one of them is it's so funny, 27 things I want to do before I die. And then there's a very specific reason why it's 27. He never told us why, but there is apparently, So just listing out 27 things you want to do before you die, or the best day exercise, or some of these things. So all of these different ways to explore what's important to you, instead of just looking at, a lot of times with core values, somebody will hand you a sheet of paper with like 50,000 words on it. They're like, pick 3,
Yeah.
And how would you know what's really important? So really taking, a deep dive into, just reliving, the answer. Right. You already know the answer. And, but this just gives you different ways to pull it out of you. And
fabulous. So, I love that. So I've got just for about 5 more minutes before I'm going to close. Is there anything we didn't cover that strikes you as important to people who want to go down this path?
Yeah. I had mentioned a little bit about the environment, but I think it's really important that core values don't become just words on paper. Right. The women I work with, they spend so much time picking just the perfect word, right? And, for me, like I went through the alliteration, so it was easy for me to remember, right? And so I'd say your brain has no ability to remember more than 3 things at any given time. Like,
true.
And so I wouldn't go much past that when it comes to what actually matters, because you won't remember the other two, I
You're right.
promise.
You're
If you go
absolutely
for
right.
5, right?
I have 5 that I generally share with listeners when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I'm like, and and how much of a core value can it be if you're not even remembering it? So I think you have a much better approach for sure.
So, so I like that minimalist approach. Doesn't mean that other things aren't important, just getting it down to the 3 most important, because that you actually, your old caveman brain actually has the ability to remember those 3.
Yeah.
And then I say, put it into a physical expression somehow, so that there's a constant reminder. And so, stuff, depending on what your flavor is, it could be a vision board. One of the things I love to do is I create a Pinterest board that actually does, because I'm not going to sit around and cut up paper, but, I'll do a Pinterest board or I'll make a wallpaper to go on my computer so I can see it all the time. Like I said, I actually created a space in my home. So my home office, it is a physical expression of those core values. A lot of clients, I say, find a picture that represents something that evokes the feeling, and put it in a place that you see it all the time. And I say, change it up often, because you'll get used to it.
You stop seeing it, like the wallpaper you should have gotten rid of 20 years ago. Yes,
exactly. Right. So I say do that. And I also think it's important to revisit them. There are some people that your values are what they are, and they will never change throughout your life. Right. And then there's others of us that, that we haven't grown into all that we're going to be yet. Right. And so as we continue to grow and learn more about ourselves, right, then I believe it's okay for your values to change. And I would expect them to change if you're one of those people that is, continuing that didn't hit the, adult target at 19.
Yeah. I think that's I don't know. I never even thought to examine my core values till I was well into my, certainly not my 20s and probably not my 30s. So I think that's a really good point. I don't know that mine won't change in 10 years. Right now, I feel like they would never change, but sometimes the external world changes us, and we are learning what we can never know what's going to happen. So I think it is important to be flexible.
I think so. There are some people that are internally motivated, right? And so theirs will be unwavering. And then there's some that are actually, they ping off the world around them.
Yes.
Right? And both are very valid, and they're equally okay. Right. And so it could affect the way that you, see your importance and what you value in the world.
You read your one core value statement, and that was the one related to curiosity. Read your other 2 statements, and then I'll close up.
Okay, let me get back to them so I don't have to, like I said, I had to. So connection, I connect to myself, to my people, and to my source. Good. And what that looks like is I meditate, I spend time in nature, I play with the people I care about. Good. And then for comfort, I behave in ways that create personal comfort. So I keep a cleaning schedule, I pay my bills on time, I pay attention to how food fuels me, I create a work schedule with boundaries, and I try really hard to answer my emails when I get them, but that doesn't always happen.
I understand.
Yeah.
That is, I loved this talk, Ursula. I really did, because I think it taught me that we don't have as fixed a mindset as we think we do. And that's, growth mindset is everything when it comes to leadership. So I'm always preaching it. Yeah. I wonder if I'm living it sometimes when it comes to introvert, extrovert, and our core values, things like that. So you really gave me a lot to think about. I hope you did our listeners as well.
Yeah. Well, we have a saying at the She Hive, take my advice. I'm not using it. So
and spend another minute telling us about She Hive. By the way, do you have to live in Michigan to take advantage? And now that it's online, I guess not. So spend a minute talking about She Hive. What is it exactly?
So, the She Hive is grounded in that I wanted women to be able to explore things that they were really passionate about with other women that were passionate about them as well too. Right. And so it used to be just a bunch of classes that had anything to do with women's development. So it could be personal, professional, spiritual, physical, whatever. And so it was just a series of 50 events, about anything that we cared about or somebody cared about, right? And we would bring teachers in and all that. We have moved everything to online, but we've actually moved to a membership model too, where we're actually doing circles. And so you can join, and right now we're just testing out a few for the summer. We'll launch more in the fall. But if you're really passionate about entrepreneurism, you can join the entrepreneur circle. And we actually have a couple of different levels, like those that are going to start a business, those that are actually trying to align their business to their core values.
Love that. So go ahead.
I was going to say, and we'll have ones like if you're passionate about, exploring alternative spirituality. There will be a circle launching in the fall. If you want to, explore your passion in life, we've got a compass circle. So we've got a couple different memberships going that way.
I love that. So again, that's theshehive.com. Am I right, Ursula?
Yes, you are.
Perfect. So if any listeners are interested in finding out more about my personal and professional life coaching services and how they're designed to help you reclaim your life, go to myturnlifecoaching.com. And there you can also go to the podcast tab to find recordings of this and all of my transformation talk radio shows. So finally, I want to thank my guest, Ursula Adams. Thanks for putting up with a little technical difficulties, and listeners to you as well. Thank you for your grace and really showing us what it means to live inside your core values. Again, sometimes we think we're doing it, but we may not be. Yeah. Tune in next time, guys, and we're going to be talking to a gentleman named Tom Lillig. He's a best-selling author, business and nonprofit executive. He's a renowned speaker about how to live what he calls a no barriers life. Tom's going to share some insights from his latest book called What's Within You, about how to reach our fullest potential no matter the obstacles. So that's going to be Wednesday, August 25th at noon Pacific time. As always, thanks again to my amazing producer, Jacob Kappas, who really had to get us back online during the crisis of technical difficulties. Thanks, as always, Jacob. You always make this process as effortless as possible, and I'm so thankful for you. And last but not least, Ursula, I think you're going to like this because you kind of touched on it a couple of times. I'm going to close out the interview as I do every interview with one of my favorite quotes related to life transformation. Today's quote is from one of my all-time favorite human beings and celebrities, Mr. Jon Stewart, formerly of the Daily Show, brilliant man. And he said, if you don't stick to your values when they're being tested, they're not values, they're hobbies. Until next time, be thinking about what you can do to help you reclaim your life. Ursula, thank you once again.
Rikki, thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning into My Turn Life Coaching with me, Rikki Schwartz. Now, before you go, ask yourself this question. At my memorial service, what do I want folks to say was my passion? What do I want them to say was my purpose? If you don't know, or you don't think they'll know, then it's time to say it out loud. It's my turn. Visit myturnlifecoaching.com today and let me help you reclaim your life.